We welcome to the program now Joel Samy, host of America's Roundtable Radio Program, co-founder, International Leaders Summit. Joel, good to see you.
A very good afternoon to you, Gerard. It's great to see you and be back on SuperTalk Mississippi Media.
Yes, sir. So we've got the Democrat National Convention in full swing, 2 nights in the books, another 2 nights. I think we'll see Governor Tim Walz make his address tonight where he accepts the nomination for vice president. And then tomorrow night, the vice president currently, Kamala Harris, will make her acceptance speech as the Democratic nominee for president. What's your takeaway so far of the last 2 nights? We've been talking about it a lot on the show. What do you think?
Well, it's truly been an interesting couple of days in Chicago. For sure there is a protest that is really being underreported, of course, an anti-Israel, anti-America protest that certainly the media has not been highlighting. And that causes really, concerns about how the Democratic Party is portraying a united front. But there is a Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, which is not being shown. But as far as the messages that are being communicated, there is this interesting theme of hope returning to America. But when I think about the past 3 years, what I see is that misery returned to America rather than hope. And America's engaged voters and citizens have really faced sort of these punitive measures of high inflation, high energy costs, high fuel costs, paying for groceries now 40% more than what it was in 2020 and just in January 2021 when President Trump left office. So, yes, it's great to hear about hope, but hope doesn't provide food on the table. And what we need is really good policies that make an impact at the end of the day. And principal policies are low taxation, less regulation, prosperity for all, and government handouts. Today, government is becoming the greatest new employer for Americans across the country. And in December 2023, the top 3 jobs that were provided came from healthcare. Second was government. Guess who pays the bill for the government workers? It's the taxpayer.
Yeah. It feels like, Joel, I've taken in the vast majority of the speeches. It's kind of lean on policy, and certainly whenever they touch on it, they really don't provide any substantive details on how those policies would be orchestrated, implemented, and the direct result of those. But it's been pretty strong on anti-Trump rhetoric. They're just obsessed with the man.
Exactly. And, what I sensed is more of a hatred towards the individual, President Donald Trump, a message of division. They talk about unity, but when you look into detail as to what they're saying, it's about dividing America, creating this sort of class warfare, this demographic warfare. And they talk about equality, but it's not really, opportunity with equality, but equality of outcomes. And that's really socialism. And what we have heard thus far through Harris' economic plan, that is truly a socialist scheme of higher taxes, of price controls, and a command and control structure, which reminds us of what happened in Venezuela, Argentina, the former Soviet bloc, and even Yugoslavia in the days of the 1970s and 80s. So we certainly don't want to see our economy go downward. We want, it's not about a left or right issue that Reagan would talk about. It's either being on the top or the bottom. And so what we see now is just policies that have been, thrown toward us as far as we can see, is that a tax hike for businesses, 28% tax hike. I mean, it's going to be risen from 21% to 28%. And that will make us not competitive in the global marketplace when you have the European Union countries averaging some 22%, and we are going to be an economic laggard, then an economic tiger. And that makes a difference back at home.
And to your point, Joel, there's been no shortage of the class warfare rhetoric either. This just seems to be a central theme with the Democrats these days. If you're successful, if you're producing a profit, if you're gaining ground financially, you're just considered evil. You're demonized. That's just seems to me to conflict with the idea of America in general.
Exactly. It's about America is a land of opportunity. And our founding fathers, and over the decades and the past 2 centuries, we have seen America grow to be the beacon of hope and opportunity, whereby individuals coming to America as legal immigrants contributed to the success of America, creating jobs and an entrepreneurial engine, an economic giant in the world. But it doesn't happen with redistribution, which the Democrats are pushing. In fact, if one would look at John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, they would certainly not be a part of the Democratic Party, but they would be Republicans today. When you think about the policies that John F. Kennedy was promoting, which was lower taxation. And with the Obamas talking about, this whole issue about wealth in America and for those that have accumulated wealth, well, they're certainly speaking from the ivory tower themselves, and it's hypocritical. Their wealth is $70 million and,
right.
Several mansions from Chicago to Washington, D.C. and the Hamptons. And, that doesn't equate with people living in the urban parts of Chicago that are struggling today. So it's certainly far removed from reality.
Joel, I know you keep up a lot with the situation in Israel, Gaza, Hamas, et cetera, that conflict in general, and there's just scores of protesters all around the DNC. It seems to have divided the party somewhat. To what extent do you think this is going to influence the outcome of the election?
Well, it remains to be seen exactly how Kamala Harris is able to engage this specific faction, which we sincerely should call the Hamas faction of the DNC. They are anti-American protesters. They are anti-Israel protesters. They have nothing good to say about America. They have nothing good to say about Israel. They protest not just against Israel, but against America's closest ally in the Middle East. Israel is a sovereign state. And from what we've seen, what Blinken is trying to push is a ceasefire. But we have to remember that on October 6th, we had a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. But Hamas broke that ceasefire and attacked Israel, killing thousands of individuals. And we know that over 1,200 individuals were killed and over 5,000 were severely injured. And with over 240 hostages taken, including Americans. Americans are still in Gaza, and the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, hasn't really done much to really free them. So the Democratic Party has a serious problem. In fact, a recent poll from the University of Maryland in 2023 showed that only 20% of the people oppose the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which is targeting Israel. So that means 80% of the people favor sanctions against Israel, and that's the Democratic voters. So for our Jewish friends that support the Democratic Party, I would certainly like to pose this question. Who really is supportive of Israel? Is it the Democrats chanting death to Israel on the streets of Chicago? Or is the center-right, the Republican Party, that stands strongly with the state of Israel and for its sovereignty? And just over the last 24 hours, we saw 50 rockets coming from Hezbollah, guided by Iran. And Iran is promising to basically destroy Israel in the days to come. So we have weak leadership in the White House that is also adding fuel to the crisis that we're seeing in the Middle East as well as in Europe with an emboldened Russia.
I mean, at this point, they've said little to none about any sort of foreign policy. I haven't heard anything, and there's still nothing on her website with respect to policy, and Mr. Trump rightfully points that out and exposes that. But, well, I think the honeymoon will be over, and as I've been saying this morning, using Barack Obama's own terminology, she'll be in the barrel pretty soon. and will be under scrutiny. Joel, always good to talk to you. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Gerard. Great to be with you all on SuperTalk Mississippi Media.
Appreciate it. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio.